And this is the Colombia Calling podcast. I'm Richard Mccoll, your host here in Bogota, Colombia. Our very special guests this week are outside of Medellin in the countryside. Well, there's two people, but they're both named Sam, but we're going to go by one by Samir. He needs no introduction to you. He's been on the podcast a couple of times. He's the director and founder of La Guaira, which is an authentic ayahuasca experience and retreat in the Antiochian countryside. He's also the producer and host of the Ayahuasca podcast. That's Samir or Sam from Latvia. And we've got Sam Lipman-Stern, who is an Emmy nominated filmmaker. I'm particularly pleased to see when I scrolled through his website that he's worked with Gary Clark Jr., one of my favorite musicians, but he was Emmy nominated because he created, executive produced, co-directed a 3-part documentary series called Telemarketers for HBO, which I am embarrassed to say I've not yet seen, but I will now. Of course I will. Anyway, Sam and Samir, welcome on the Colombia Calling podcast.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you, Richard. It's very nice of you to have us on. And it's, I must be brutally honest, it's my first time I ever participated in a podcast with more than one person.
Let's go.
So, some stumbles and jumbles, whatever, but we'll figure out something.
You'll be absolutely fine. So I got you. So where are you guys at the moment? Where are you seated?
We're in Medellin.
Okay, you're in Medellin. That's not so bad. Not so bad. Now let's start with the very basics here. Let's start with Samir. You've been here a while. You know, ayahuasca or Yage was a reason for you to lift your spirits, and I would say I think there was depression. Certainly, we addressed this in the first episode that we did with you all those years ago. And ayahuasca changed your life. Ayahuasca, for those who don't know, is a sacred indigenous medicine. A sacred indigenous medicine from the Andes region, taken from a vine, boiled up over time. Samir, you'll be able to tell me far more about this, of course. And it has lifted you out. And from that experience, you have now created this La Guaira retreat. You've had hundreds, if not thousands of people pass through your doors, all seeking a type of, I wouldn't say maybe enlightenment or something. Everyone has a burden within them, and this has been something that has helped release it and understand it. And now I understand with Sam, you guys are going to make a documentary and sort of detail this, I guess. Perhaps one of you wants to jump in and just say, what is the documentary? Because you're 2/3 of the way through it.
Well, really, just one thing to say is you are lucky because you're the first person that we've talked to publicly about this. Yeah. So I'm really excited to be able to chat with you about it today. Everyone knows on like my back team, like my managers and all those agents, they know about it. So I'm excited to chat with you about it today. But it's cool. That started and it's been an amazing trip.
So yeah, my story was I was depressed, and then I tried ayahuasca. I was so excited about it. I started an ayahuasca retreat, and then an ayahuasca podcast. Now we're making an ayahuasca documentary. So I was not ever diagnosed with depression. I was never taking antidepressants. Sam, on the other hand, was taking antidepressants, so he's now off them for about 4 weeks. So he's actually going to be doing his first ever ayahuasca experience this month. And this is the last part of the documentary, the last third that's missing for us to create the trailer, and then going through all of the process that happens with the documentary. I met Sam. Basically in the early days of La Guaira, and we met very synchronistically. Immediately, you don't generally make friends as an adult, but we just immediately hit it off, and we became good friends. And since day one, I was like, well, you make videos, and ayahuasca needs a documentary. And I was like, what about this one? And here, the first he was like skeptical, and then he got really busy with the Telemarketers project, got sort of a lot of success. And then eventually things just once again happened. We both had a bit of a crisis at the same time. And it just became obvious that now is the time. And the beauty of it is, for him, I don't want to talk about it. it's a project where he delves into ayahuasca himself, and it's very similar. When you're going to watch Telemarketers, you'll see that he just kind of injects himself in the situation, and that's a story from his perspective. And now he's going to do this with ayahuasca, and we've already done some good filming. We'll tell you about that. And so he's going to do the retreat, and we're going to put it all together and create the story about his own healing here in Colombia. Same as my healing, and as you said, thousands of people have come through our doors. But this is going to be a different story because it's going to be not just about Sam and not just about ayahuasca, but it's also going to be about ayahuasca in Colombia and also the indigenous cultures and sort of us trying to make this attempt to rebrand Colombia from cocaine to ayahuasca. That's something I've actually first said on your podcast as well, maybe 3 years ago, more than 3 years ago. But this is no longer words, because if we manage to do it well, which I'm sure we will, because Sam is as good as it gets with the documentaries, and I'm as good as it gets with ayahuasca experiences. So if we do it well, we might actually make a dent in that reputation thing. So we travel around Colombia. We're collecting footage and putting the story together. So now Sam will tell you more about the documentary.
We just got back, by the way. We just got back from like a 6-day production trip. A journey, wild experience. It was just the two of us. And we went into the Amazon rainforest. We learned about shamanism, went to a shaman market. We went to Putumayo, which is amazing. I'm not sure if you've been there before, but
never.
Highly recommend it. But go talk to Sam about it. So we went into Putumayo. We learned all about shamanism here in Colombia. There's so many interesting things that why I was attracted to this story as a filmmaker. But I'll name a couple for you. So one is that going along with the trip that we were on is that people, as far as I'm aware, the majority of people coming from the Western world don't think they associate Colombia with shamanism and ayahuasca, or Yage, as they'd say in Putumayo. They just don't. So they go, you're going to do ayahuasca. Maybe they think, well, Americans are like, I'm going to do it in California, or maybe I'll go down to Cancun or Costa Rica, which, is, I think, kind of silly. Like, if you're going to do it right. Like, go where it comes from, where the plant grows, like, come to Colombia, and so anyway, I was blown away by the history of shamanism here. So we met with Sam's shamans that he works with, and they trace their lineage back, I think, 7 generations, which that's incredible. We're not talking about like some white dude with dreadlocks outside of Los Angeles who's the shaman. It's like, no, this is like lineage, thousands of years. That's one of the things. So shamanism and the history of this medicine in Colombia, where the Western world and the world is starting to learn about it and getting more interested in it, but they don't really know that much about it. From the conversations I've had with people that have done this medicine. And again, I'm talking about Americans, Europeans. So we really want to get into that. The second element that I find fascinating is when I met Sam and he told me about his journey to change, Colombia from being known for cocaine, unfortunately, to being known for ayahuasca. I was really blown away by that mission. I thought it was really important in many, many different ways. And I think that, I wanted to be able to document his journey of doing that. Third is that I had experimented with DMT. I don't know if you've tried DMT, but I experimented with DMT many times while living in Los Angeles. It kind of called to me in a way, which I think these things do. And one of these DMT totally changed my life. And that's, one of the elements in Yage or in ayahuasca. So DMT changed my life, and I was living in Los Angeles. I did a DMT experience, and I had and I was on antidepressants, and I had a very clear vision and voice say, if you want to learn more, go to the Amazon and get off antidepressants and do ayahuasca. So that was before I moved out here. So my own personal journey is another element of this story. Like I've been on antidepressants. I was living in New York City for many years. New York in the winter can be rough. I'm not blaming it on just on that, but I had a lot of undiagnosed mental health issues, anxiety, depression, OCD being the main ones. I got on antidepressants when I was in 2016. And the thing about, and I'm not saying they're bad. I think they were what I needed at the time. The problem is, along with therapy, which I did, which I'm huge advocate of therapy. So therapy and antidepressants. The problem is the United States is not based around healthcare. It's a for-profit business, and they're like, okay, they get you on it, but there's no conversation about getting off it. It's not like you should take this for 1 year. You should take it. No, it's like, that's it. You're on it for life. So thanks to this project, you have to get off of antidepressants in order to do ayahuasca, or you die. It's a good chance you're gonna die. So I got off antidepressants. I'm 4 weeks off for the first time. I've been wanting to get off of them, so it was kind of I had to do it, and I wanted to do it, and that's one of the things you'll see in this film. I documented my whole process of getting off of antidepressants, which isn't easy. It's not easy to do. So, but I feel great, and I'm really ready for this journey. So my personal journey with mental health and getting off antidepressants is a part of the story as well. There's a bunch of other elements also, but that's kind of the short.
There's too much here. There's too much here for me to jump in. You've been, let's get something quite clear. You've been off antidepressants for four weeks. So you've been sort of like cutting the pills in half,
exactly.
And then doing a week.
Very high dosage. So I was on 200 milligrams of sertraline, which is also Zoloft.
Yeah.
Which is the highest that they recommend. Yeah. I was on a high dose of, but it stopped working was one of the things that led me to, well, at the same time as we really got into filming, I was talking to Sam, like, I was going through kind of my own kind of a crisis, and it was like, this isn't working anymore. So the antidepressants stopped working at the same time. Even though they stopped working, I still had withdrawal symptoms, which have gone away at this point, but for a couple of weeks, it was not an easy journey. But I think hopefully this inspires people out there that are struggling with mental health issues or want to get off antidepressants to see somebody that's very vulnerable.
After they consult with their doctor.
Of course.
Let's get that in there too, because...
Certainly,
interestingly,
talk to your doctor.
What you're describing is antidepressants stop working. That's called treatment-resistant depression, and it's rampant. They actually stop working, so then they put you in another one. Then you get more side effects.
Yeah.
Put you in another one, and another one. And I've had success stories with people that drink ayahuasca and they're not depressed anymore. Even the treatment-resistant depression people. So just a little plug in there.
Another thing that we both positively influenced each other similarly at the same time is I'm not drinking coffee anymore. I don't drink alcohol. I basically, because I noticed there was a correlation. Like if I drink alcohol one night, I feel depressed for 3 days, right? So even when I was on antidepressants, so at the same time getting off and preparing myself for this retreat in a couple of weeks, I've cleaned my system. As long as Sam as well, we're doing whenever we go out and we're filming, it's like no sugar, no carbs. We're annoying a little bit to the waitresses, but I think it's for a good cause. So I've been feeling great, man. I'm 4 weeks off and I feel really good. Thank God, because I wasn't sure how I would feel.
Yeah, it's not just a personal journey. Yeah, it's a professional journey because you're doing the documentary. So therefore, when you annoy the waitresses, it's like it's work. It's work.
Exactly.
This is fascinating. There's another thing I just wanted to get out there. Maybe Samir, just explain to us what DMT is for my listeners, just in case they don't know.
So I'm glad DMT really works for Sam, but generally that's not something I would recommend. DMT is the core compound of ayahuasca. It's the main active ingredient. The difference with DMT, normally they smoke it. With ayahuasca, you consume it by drinking it. And the trip is shorter, so it's 15 minutes versus 4 or 5 hours. And it's not really, let's say, the most traditional stuff, but it's mostly used for visions. Even though, some people get good effects, so I'm not hating on it, but it's not something that I know a lot about. What I want to address is that DMT is not ayahuasca, and ayahuasca is not DMT. DMT is to ayahuasca what cheese is to pizza. Even though there is some cheese in the pizza, it doesn't give you a pizza experience just by eating a slice of cheese. That's I remember myself when I was getting curious about ayahuasca. It was like, well, this ayahuasca thing, and you're gonna vomit, and you're gonna have diarrhea. Maybe I'll just smoke DMT instead. But little did I know that a lot of the healing with ayahuasca comes from origin, comes from the ceremonial experience, and obviously it's a deeper dive. So DMT is not orally active. However, the ayahuasca vine itself contains MAOI, so it's MAO inhibitor that basically makes DMT orally active. So ayahuasca vine actually does not contain any DMT. The DMT comes from the shrub, and we've seen it all in the jungle just a few days ago. Collected them and cooked them and stuff like that. So you'll see it in the documentary when it comes out. But that marriage of those two plants makes DMT orally active, and you, instead of a 10 to 15 minute visual trip, you're getting a very deep 4 to 5 hours, or sometimes even more, emotional, spiritual, and a bodily experience with purging and with a lot of removal and processing of emotions. So it's kind of like instead of not getting a good analogy, it's like instead of instant noodles, you get actual ramen from a restaurant.
Someone said to me, I've never done ayahuasca, right? I'm preparing for the journey. A friend of mine, and I don't know if this is relative, but he said, who had done a lot of ayahuasca experiences, he said that DMT is the trailer and ayahuasca is the movie. So I don't know if that makes sense.
That's a good one. From a filmmaker?
From a filmmaker, I like that. You're the filmmaker and Samir is a pizzeria. But listen, I think this story is it's going to be really fascinating, because I guess what you're doing is you're tracing it from its initiations, its commencement in the jungle as a vine. You're speaking to the shamans. I can't remember what you have a different word, don't you? For shaman.
Call them Taitas.
Taitas. Yeah. So you're going to follow them through the sacred culture and the preparation and so on. And then I would say that the guinea pig is then Sam. Are you going to be filmed during your...
So, yeah, absolutely. We're filming everything. It's like, I love to, yeah, we're going to film the whole thing. So we'll have a camera crew there. And I'm going to, I won't be able to direct, but I'm going to give them full instructions. Just shoot everything. I want, even if throwing up, I would just film it all. I want footage of everything just to have it.
So this, despite this being a sacred experience, this almost harks back to your time of filming for Vice and Rolling Stone. It's that kind of, although, obviously this is taking in a far more personal journey, you've kind of got the extreme nature of what you used to do previously.
100%, yeah. And you'll see, like, with anything that I do, especially telemarketers, was, I try to, so Vice especially, I came up in the early days of Vice. So I started working at Vice in 2000, and there was when I tell people, hey, I'm working at this place Vice, and they're like, what the heck is that? And I started as an intern in film school. I was going to Temple University in Philly. And then in 2012, it blew the fuck up. So
yeah.
I don't curse on the show.
That's right.
So it blew up. And everyone was asking me, can you get me a job at Vice? So it blew up overnight. But everything that I've been working on films. I was interested in filmmaking since I was 13. So I was the kid with the camcorder in my group of friends. I was always filming everything. Just that in telemarketers. But what the style of Vice was documentary boot camp. That's what we would call it. They didn't pay you great there. They actually paid you pretty badly. That's known in the film industry. But you learned so much. It was a master's degree in documentary filmmaking. And so the style of those old Vice documentaries was very much like, it's definitely, you'll see elements of that in my filmmaking. That's where I learned how to become a documentary filmmaker. So I love the humor. We were just filming with this guy, Chilpo, in this monument park.
San Agustin archaeological park.
Oh, you were in San Agustin.
And that's where you have it's like the only place with these giant like structures of in South America. I think there's another one in Guatemala, and it was just incredible. But our guide was an eccentric, hilarious, fascinating, and like highly knowledgeable guy. But he was a character out of like a Werner Herzog documentary. And we were just like, he was playing the flute. He was telling us about gnomes and the trees. He was doing like, cleaning ceremonies on us. At the same time, he knew everything about every single sculpture, which many were based on around shamans. They were depictions of shamans. But this character was so great. I can't wait till people see Chilpo. He was just perfect. He was all of the elements that make a great character in a documentary. So I love getting those moments. Like, it's not like meant to be. I know people have done documentaries on ayahuasca. For me, you need to have humor in it. Character driven. All the characters we've met along the way have been amazing. So it's very kind of you'll see there's some kind of a Vice, Rolling Stone, Gonzo journalism, right? Hunter S. Thompson element to this story.
I love this. You got San Agustin is a very special place. And you feel it. You feel the energy. It is a huge pre-Columbian cemetery. And you feel the energy in everything. And I know of people, I've been a couple of times, but I know of people who can't sleep when they're there because of this weird energy. Did either of you, well, Samir, you've been a few times, I bet. But do you feel something special when you're in San Agustin?
So it was my second time there. Definitely when you walk around the park, it's like there's some kind of little buzz going on.
Oh yeah, and our guide even showed us ayahuasca growing within the park, which was amazing. It's a really powerful place. I felt like when we walked in, I didn't have any expectations because I knew nothing. I've never been there. But I felt like we walked in and we were in another universe for a couple hours, and then we came out. It was like it fully took us in as we were there, including with our guide Chilpo. It was just a fully kind of a psychedelic experience in a way, just being there. It felt like we were in another plane of existence. At least that's how I felt.
It's a part of the story, the fact that here in Colombia you can go deep as going to the jungle and talking to the shamans from a lineage, seeing their plants grown in the jungle. But you can go even deeper when you go to places like San Agustin or the Gold Museum, and you see like an ayahuasca cap made from gold, or you see a shaman's outfit made entirely from gold. This is not something new, and that's the biggest thing we try to debunk. Together with Colombia being this dangerous, narco-driven place, we're trying to debunk the story that ayahuasca is this new fact. It's a 1,000-year-old tradition. You can see it's set in stone, literally 1,000-year-old stones. You can see, like he was showing us, they're like people, and they're in the statue. The cheek is a little bit popped because there's some coca, and they're chewing it, and the pupils of the eyes are dilated because they're dripping, and it's like there's the connection, there's this lineage that we can trace, and it's interesting because with ayahuasca, some people used to say it was 5,000 year old, then it's like 8,000 years. It keeps postponing and going later, and we're in the West, we still call it a drug, even though it's been a medicine and it's been used for healing and for spiritual reasons for literally tens of thousands of years. So that's the story of Colombia, and all of that at the same time with most people in the world not even knowing that there's ayahuasca in Colombia. They think ayahuasca is something in Costa Rica, and trust me, you're not gonna find stones about ayahuasca in Costa Rica. Like Colombia is as traditional as it gets. A bit of a word moment for you.
So I think of when you talk about the sort of anthropomorphic figures in San Agustin, I think the place in Guatemala is Quirigua, which is spectacular as well, but it's a tiny park that nobody goes to. There's no...
No, I'd like to go.
Yeah, it's not far from Rio Dulce in that area. I lived in Guatemala for a year, back in a different lifetime. Samir, sorry, I have one question. Is, you're using the term or the word ayahuasca for everything. Of course, in Colombia, it's known as Yage widely. Why have you decided that ayahuasca should be the word?
So, I mean, honestly, we call it ayahuasca because everyone knows it as ayahuasca. It's it's one of those. So first of all, in their tradition, there's not here in Colombia they call it Yage, but the ayahuasca by itself has many different Curihuasca, Tigrehuasca, Cielohuasca. There's a lot of variety. There is no real difference between ayahuasca and Yage except for the name. It's basically like a language thing. If you call it, cerveza in Spanish, you call it beer in English, and you call it Yage here in Colombia, and you call it ayahuasca in Peru or Brazil. But like being honest, ayahuasca is the word that got popularized. We will be using the word Yage as well to popularize it as well. But to make a documentary about Yage, like, what are you talking about? So we need people to know what it is. And then as we go in, there's actually a part where we ask the shaman, how do you call it? And he says Yage. So Colombia, Ecuador is Yage, Peru and Brazil, it's ayahuasca. But it's honestly, there is, like, I used to think that it was the recipe that the DMT shrub was different. But actually this time I went there, my shaman apparently has both of the shrubs. Both the one that's more common in Peru and the one more common in Colombia. So you're not going to know a difference unless you're told.
It's like, I think that what he just said, and I'm just learning this for the first time, right? So I think it's the beer cerveza is a great example. It's like, we're going to make, it's a documentary about cerveza for the United States. Like, what are you talking about? It's like, no, it's a documentary about beer. But it's just, from what I've learned, it's just the different words. And I would assume that possibly because there's so many tribes, I would assume there would be other tribes would have other names for it within the Amazon region.
There's many names that describe the same thing. So,
well, you never know. We don't have a name yet for the documentary, so that'll come all the way down the line. So you never know. We might end up we call it Yage, the story of ayahuasca or whatever. You never know what we end up.
It'll end up being down to a producer who wants to make sure that the term is understood. Do you have a buyer? You can't.
We don't have a buyer yet. We don't have a buyer yet. We haven't pitched it yet.
Okay.
What we did do. So usually you make, like, not to get super nerdy about the film making process, but usually what production companies do, they don't. First, they go out and shoot some stuff. You make a sizzle reel, which is like a 3 to 5 minute trailer, and then a deck. So, like, what's the story in 10 pages? Maybe you bring a couple executive producers on, or a production company, and then you bring that package to the networks, to Netflix, HBO, Amazon Studios, Peacock. Basically, you go out to all the different networks with a focus on the ones that you want. Like, I got to shout out HBO because thankfully they picked up Telemarketers, but they're, in my opinion, one of the best documentary studios of all time because they're really focused on doing, like, pure documentary versus, like, reality TV and that kind of stuff. So
yeah.
But we're gonna bring it to everybody. I mean, I think Netflix would be a great home for this. I have a relationship with them, and I say Netflix because Netflix has a global audience, and we want this to be a global story. We want people to watch this all over the world.
If any of the Netflix execs are listening to this podcast, Netflix has to pick this up more than any other channel, just because Netflix did the most damage to Colombia because of the Narco series. Like, there are people in the US that come to my retreat and they're like, where's Pablo Escobar? Not this way, but like some people think it's still that version of Colombia, even though it's like 40 years ago, even more. So it's Netflix has to pick this documentary. Like, they just absolutely have to. Karmically, they need to work through it and show that ayahuasca is not just cocaine. It's many. It's like, that's not even like 0.1% of what Colombia has to offer. So Netflix, if you're listening, if you're not,
The idea. I love the idea of a Netflix executive listening to the Columbia Calling
I'm actually
podcast.
really good friends. I'm friends with some of the Netflix executives, and you know what? But they're all in the doc space.
Okay.
And, hello. I have a 4-year-old too.
This little guy's 5 who's just walked in. His name's Francis.
We're all dads here.
Yeah, we're all dads. You know what it's like. It's been 10 years since that very famous BBC clip where the guy was talking about North Korea and pushing his child away. It's happened to me on so many occasions, and actually like talking on DW TV. But mine doesn't go viral because I pick up my son and put him on my lap. It's what happens, you know? It's what happens.
Before we have enough conversation, so like, look, I think that, and it's not exactly just, it's not just about Netflix. Let's just talk about all the networks. So many, 3 guys who live in Colombia, love Colombia so much, right? Who've made lives here. I still go back to the States. I tell people I live in Medellin, I live in Colombia, and I hear, oh my God, isn't it dangerous, Pablo Escobar, right? And I always tell people the only time I've had a gun held to my head was in New Jersey when I was 19 years old painting graffiti. That's the only time. I'm like, I've never had a problem here. I've never been robbed. Thank God. And I know you can have problems in this country, just like you can in any major city in the United States. No doubt papaya, as we say here, right? Don't give your wealth. Don't walk around holding $10,000 in your hand in any major city in the United States. Same thing here. But the thing is, those stories about narcos, we even met some wild characters on this trip. And it's not a narco story. The story about narcos is sexy, right? We, especially in Western culture, we grew up on The Sopranos, we grew up on Scarface, we grew up on every mob movie, and I've watched them all, and I love those movies. They're great. Unfortunately, Colombia hasn't fully shed that image of Pablo Escobar and people thinking it's dangerous here. And so I think that a lot of these networks that pick up documentaries or that pick up films, they're going to unfortunately focus on buying the projects that are about, death and these stories, because unfortunately that's kind of what sells. And a lot of these executives at any network, and I've worked in the industry for a long time, they go with what's hot in the moment, and what sells the best, right? So drug, sex, death sells, So I think that, but you always are looking for those executives within these networks that have a vision, because they do exist, right? And you're trying to connect the dots at these different places. And I think that, so hopefully, I have some friends at Netflix. I'd love to bring it to Netflix. I think that the Narcos series was great. I loved it. But yes, you got to have balance. You got to do a Narcos series and then do a series about exploring shamanism and ayahuasca. Everything's a balance, So those networks out there that are just taking the Pablo stories, it's like only putting murder documentaries on your platform. There's other stories out there. So let's pick up this documentary and show another side of Colombia.
Well, I think, you focus on what is a sacred ancient tradition, history, and of course, and this is very ethnographic because you guys are following, you're there. And it's a story of recovery too.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the way you sell it to them. It's the way you sell it and package it to them. And I like the element you mentioned Chilpo in San Agustin several times. And I think to bring in really colorful characters like the Taitas or shaman and so on and bring them in, it takes away the earnest nature. And, people get bored by earnest. It's like, oh, it's this. You need to bring in that human element where it's not just, you are talking about something that's incredibly traditional, sacred. It's not a tourist experience. You're looking for something else, but not to be earned and sort of like, people don't want to be lectured to. Nobody wants that, because that means you're treating somebody like an inferior, like a student. So if you can meet people on that human level at that equilibrium, then of course it's going to be. There was a question here, something that I thought was very interesting. Obviously, last year the news cycle was dominated by the the plane crash with the Mukutui children down there in Guaviare. And I know a book's already been written, and I know it's been optioned. I know the writer, I know who's optioned it, but I can't say it here. He will be on the podcast later in the year when it's out. But I found that you could tap in, obviously, to what took place there, because, of course, it's such a visual story. Children lost in the jungle, but the indigenous guard and the people who went out searching required the army to partake in specific rituals and ceremonies with them to become closer to the jungle, which I thought was very telling. And it created a different understanding. You know, you've got these special forces guys who are incredibly straight-laced, take orders, do what they're meant to do, but they weren't allowed to continue until they had, I don't know if they partook in ayahuasca, but I know that there were certainly ceremonies, sacred ceremonies, to allow them to be more absorbed into their local environment. And I think that's something that we could address, because we're in a kind of, I would say, a post-religious experience in the world. A lot of the modern, let's say the Northern Hemisphere is a post-religious, but this is something different. This is something that reminds us that human nature should be in sync with the natural world. And there is something there, isn't there? There is something there. And that's, of course, Samir, that's what you're doing with La Guaira. It's an education, but people come in and you shed your pretensions, and this is the experience, and it's a way of I would guess, I would say, sort of reconnecting. That's kind of what you're getting at, or I'm getting at?
Yeah, connection is a big part of it. Is like literally the wireless motto is connect, heal, grow. So we talk about connection a lot. And as you know from our very first episode, I didn't come to ayahuasca for spiritual reasons. I came to heal my depression and just to feel better from a very neurochemical point of view. So I was just going to come and like reset my brain, and here I go. Now I am a spiritual person, and I've seen things that are hard to explain, and I've since understood that we are spiritual beings living in this physical life for whatever reason. It still remains unconfirmed for me. But the story of the lost children, it was really fascinating. I watched it recently. Actually, I'll admit that it made me cry in like the very end. It was really emotional, which I don't remember ever crying watching anything. It was a really beautiful story, and ayahuasca played part in it because actually they were going to give up on the search, and then they drank ayahuasca, and it showed them, don't give up, such and such time, you'll see them in such and such place. So that's really fascinating as well. Like to have, so it is sort of, in a way, the documentary we're working on is in continuation of that story, sort of showing depth to Colombia and its culture, showing giving love and respect to indigenous people and their cultural respect. I like to say, in the past, all the cultures had their psychedelic traditions. Ancient Greeks were tripping on stuff. Europeans were tripping on stuff. We all had our connection to the spiritual through different plants in different parts of the world. We lost ours. Inquisitions happened. Actually, Latvia was the last country in Europe to accept Christianity. And they came there and they killed all the shamans. I went to one Latvian sauna ritual where it's all about plants. This plant masculine, this feminine, this. And they were eating shrooms. There's no doubt, the red cap ones. So we lost ours. It was uprooted. It was destroyed. The inquisitions and witch hunts and stuff like that happened. Now we're so extremely lucky that we can tap into the traditions that are here. Not only they remain in plants, they kept tradition, they kept oral tradition, so it's like you're getting the full package experience like it would be thousands of years ago. Only recently they allowed us to join it, maybe 30, 40 years for them. It's a 1,000-year-old tradition, but nobody knew about it because we weren't told, it was kept secret. Now they're coming out giving it to strangers, sort of foreigners, and a lot of shamans say that the reason they do it is because the medicine is stolen. not just ayahuasca, but other medicines. Like, the world is so sick that shamans are drawn to get out of their caves and their jungles, go into the city, and share the medicine. So this documentary is going to be an attempt in spreading the word further on, because it might be our last resort, honestly. We're either gonna figure out and get sane, or we're gonna just destroy ourselves. And yeah, I mean, I'm already doing my best with spreading the word, like podcasts and videos and stuff like that. But this is like, hopefully, it's gonna get to the masses, and people will be like, you know what? I mean, maybe I'll give it a try, and it will change people's lives. And interestingly enough, Sam hasn't had it yet. He just had a second-hand experience from.
Yeah.
He recorded one of the retreats at the Wire, and some people gave him interviews, life-changing stories. But it's like none of it is real for him. So he will be able to record that story. The fact that he doesn't know anything before meeting me, so all the questions he asked are potentially the questions people would have. So that's the plan. But I went totally off course.
That's fine.
One of the things really important to me, in just in my own style of filmmaking, was I don't want to know anything going into this, and I want to document everything of that, so that the viewers, the people out there, can learn along with me. I know nothing. I'm like a kindergartner. I don't know shit about this world of ayahuasca, shamans. Again, I've had some psychedelic experiences in my past, which, but I don't know anything. So the idea for me was super important to shoot everything on the entire journey. So, and I'm still, like I said, we've just led up to gathering all this knowledge, going in. We made ayahuasca in the jungle with the shamans. We learned about shamanism and the culture out here. So I went to a retreat, and I'm off antidepressants now, and so it's like the whole thing's being documented, and we still don't know exactly where the story's going to lead, which is the most exciting thing for me about documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
You don't know what's to come. That's really exciting to me.
We look forward to watching your voracious vomiting on film.
Yes. We have ideas of how we're going to film that too.
Yeah, it can be totally projectile. I have a final thing as we wind this down, and I thought I'd turn off my phone, but as we wind this down, in a perfect world, from completing the editing to production and then broadcasting, how long are we looking at? A couple of years?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay.
So. That the process, like Telemarketers, was a long journey. It was. Yeah. I mean, that's not going to be this, but I mean, Telemarketers, from selling it to HBO, which we sold first. All right, so the pitch material process, developing it to the point of sale, was 1 year.
Mm.
And we sold it in May 2021. It happened from Colombia, the official pitch to HBO, which I'm proud of. And then we released it in August 2023. We're talking about, so sold in pitched in March 2020 and aired in August 2023. We're talking about pitched to a production company.
Mm.
So that was we're talking about a 3.5 year process.
Yeah, it's a process.
So that's usually what it takes to make like television documentaries. So I would say something along those lines. But if you follow us on social media, not shameless plug, but we've been posting a lot of photos and just showing a lot of behind the scenes from this journey. We haven't announced it yet, but we've just been like, hey, here we are in the jungle. Yeah. Here we are, so.
Let me just
share us your social media pages.
Well, in a second. So I wanted to tell something. It's another exciting idea. So as Sam said, he pitched the documentary from Medellin, and also when it came through and it was the screening.
Yeah, official screening. Yeah,
he did one screening in US and one screening in Medellin, and I believe it was the first one ever.
Yeah, I believe it was the first HBO screening in Medellin, and Sam was there. You'll come to the next one, of course, but it was so important. We did that at the Modern Art Museum here.
Cool.
And HBO sponsored it. It was a real, legit HBO event. the reason I needed to do it is because I care about this country so much. I love Colombia, and any things that we can do, whether it's expanding the film world here or doing events or the documentary that we're doing to show another side of Colombia, a very different side, all of that helps to grow this, to teach the world and the Colombia that we here in this Zoom or in this podcast know and love. You know, it's just incredibly, I think, in my opinion, one of the best places on planet Earth. You know, I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
We're working on, if that goes well, and hopefully other projects, we're working on this idea we call Meadowood.
Meadowood.
It's New Hollywood here in
Meadowood.
Meadowood, yeah.
More production.
I'm just throwing it out.
Put it
All
out.
right. For everyone out there, we're at Meadowood there, is it?
We're going to buy a giant sign and put it on the mountain.
Holly Jin.
That works
Meadowood. All right. It's time for your social media plugs, please.
So I'm at Sam _ Lipman-Stern. So it's LIPMANSTERN. Two very Jewish names put together. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for being hippies and hyphenating. Although that's the norm here, right? You put the father's name and the mother's name. So in the States, they don't. My mom, shout out to my mom, was like, hey, I'm putting my name on this. So she was Sam Lipman-Stern, at Sam _ Lipman-Stern on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. But I'm mostly active on Instagram. That's mostly my day stories and that.
Sure.
So, send me a DM if anyone if anyone is listening to this and they want to reach out. I mean, I'm very also super, super open about filmmaking. So if there's anybody out there that wants to learn about filmmaking, has a question, these people, when I was in university or even before that, who I reached out to, from Michael Moore to John Ronson, David Cho, like people that I really looked up to, I reached out to, I remember. And the people that would respond, you'll never forget those people because it meant so much to me for a journalist like John Ronson, who's one of my favorite documentary filmmakers and writers. Not sure if you guys are familiar, but he did The Men Who Stare at Goats and a lot of other stuff. Wrote to him when I was like 22 in university, asking him about telemarketers, and he said, pursue it with your life. Pursue it until you get to that. Just pursue. And I'll never forget that. So I'm the same way when people reach out to me. I had like a 17-year-old film student reach out the other day, and I'm like, hey, feel free to reach out to me about filmmaking. I'm happy to answer questions. Maybe it might not be right away, because I'm busy, but I will respond. So that's my...
I get about an email a week from rookie journalists. I always respond.
That's going to last a lifetime, man. You know, it's not easy what we do, and for people to take that path is something. We need more journalists. So yeah, help the kid.
All right, Samir.
Cool. From my point of view, if you are ready to drink ayahuasca, go to just Google ayahuasca in Colombia anywhere on the internet, and you'll probably find us somewhere on top. Because our original website is still ayahuascaincolombia.com. The retreat name is Lawira. You can find us on socials at Lawira, LAWAYRA. My personal Instagram is at Sam Believe. It's Sam Believe without E. If you're going to learn more about ayahuasca, check out my podcast. It's ayahuascapodcast.com. Very simple and easy to find. We have lots of episodes there, and different success stories, and also just interviewing all kinds of experts on the topic. So,
well, thank you guys for taking the time out of your day. And of course, thank you to Samir getting in touch and proposing this conversation. That's really great. I'm flattered to be the first kind of outlet that has been approached with this story. So therefore, we shall be following you all the way to the end, and we will be there at the Colombia screening in Meadowood, as you said. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak to Samir Guaira, the La Guaira retreat. Of course, check that out. You've heard the socials. They'll be up on our Facebook, Twitter, and so on, Instagram. Thank you again to director Sam Lipman-Stern for his time. Both of you are incredibly accomplished people in your field, so it's a real pleasure to get you on. I know the listeners will love this because it's just, another human story. This is the kind of thing I've been trying to sort of pivot into a bit more this year already, and so I'm just really happy with it. To see you two, for those of you who don't watch us on YouTube, but to see you two on the other side of the screen in Medellin, you just look like happy people who are doing something they love, and how that should be uplifting to all. That should be that should be something.
Yeah, interesting, especially with politics in the Western world. There's so much stuff going on on planet Earth right now. Going to just pursue. Just pursue. People out there listening, try to stay away from the news if you can, or pursue it like a journalist if you want to pursue those stories. But just try to make stuff, write books, do podcasts. Just create, man. I think for me, at least, that's my personal outlet. It's just keep creating, and that's what makes me happy.
And you look pretty happy yourself, Richard.
I'm in a good place. I was not in a great place last year for a while, but I'm in a good place right now. I've taken a different, I don't know what it is. Just something has happened. 2025 just feels good for me.
I'm so happy.
So
For a lot of people.
I had a fucking crazy ending we could talk about. That's a whole other podcast episode. I have a baby on the way now. I have fiance. A lot of everything's So a lot of people had, I think, crazy 2024. Here we are, great 2025.
Exactly.
Those of you who are not happy,
There you go. Well, we'll wind this down now. Thank you again to Sam and Samir for their time. This has been the Colombia Calling podcast. I've been Richard Mccoll, your host here in Bogota. Our guests are in Medellin, Hollywood of Colombia, let's say. And of course, you want to support us, please go to www.patreon.com/Colombia Calling. And we're back every week with great stories using largely Colombia as a lens for other tales and other, let's say creative experiences in the country. So thank you again, and